Hello, dear friends. Thank you for being with the gaze. Russia's bloody invasion of Ukraine, dangerous escalation in the Middle East, tensions in Taiwan between Azerbaijan and Armenia. What is this? Is it really the outlines of World War III? If yes, what to do about it? It is to this by no means the simplest question that we will look for the answer today in the program. Join us, please welcome Henry Keen.
Full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. Clashes, bombings, missiles incoming in a set of cities, drones dropping explosives destroying drones, blackouts. Russia welcomes the terror and terrorists. Putin handshakes Hamas in Moscow. Hamas launches a massive missile attack on the southern and central regions of Israel, invades the country, murders, and takes hostages. Israel responds by launching a counter-terrorist operation while Prime Minister Netanyahu, for some reason, calls Putin. Azerbaijan is preparing an invasion of southern Armenia. It may happen in the coming weeks. Blinken says Baku wants to build a route to the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, an exclave bordering Turkey and Iran. North Korea increasingly rattling its weapons. Japan and South Korea is concerned of what's going on North Korea and Russia getting closer and are increasing cooperation between their military industries. In return, looks like a proper time for all of us to be screaming at the top of our lungs, what's going on? Is that the beginning of the World War III? Well, welcome to the brave new world. Let's talk a bit more about it. Russia may wage its war in Ukraine right to the beginning of 2026. This was announced by the head of the Ukrainian intelligence, Kirill Budanov. He says that Moscow economic resources are enough to be protracting this war for years to come. No problem. As a consequence of this, winter Russia is again attacking the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. In addition, the Kremlin wants to drag Belarus into its war. To be honest, the Russian Federation has already seized Belarusian territory. Vladimir Putin and the big propaganda machine are lying to the Russians that the Ukrainian armed forces counteroffensive seems to be failing for about 3 years in a row, like having the whole civilized world dragged onto its side, but Russians believe the Kremlin anyway. Russians seems to be loving its lies. They are used to it. The fact that Ukrainian defense forces are actually handing Russians their heads on the battlefield while Ukrainian counteroffensive continues, and that without any air support, that stays behind the frame of Putin's lies. Yes, Ukrainian army is advancing. Perhaps not exactly as fast as some international partners expected. However, considering that Ukraine actually received way less weaponry from these international partners than it required from swift and glorious victory, the counteroffensive is a very successful operation, experts say. And yes, it is the military experts also saying aloud that the Ukrainian army did not receive the volume of weapons that will be necessary to launch a full-fledged, large-scale military offensive in all operational directions. So Ukrainians are limited in strength to conduct offensive operations only in 2 operational directions. Rest of the front line is conducting defensive actions. Along with the ground offensive, the Ukrainian armed forces are also attacking the rear of the Russian troops. Thus, attacks are carried out on command centers, ammunition depots, and logistics lines of the Russians. At the same time, most of Russia's logistic routes remain beyond the reach of Ukrainian armed forces strikes due to the limited range of weapons, because Ukraine has not yet received either proper missiles or aircraft. Sometimes when I look at the military map of Ukraine in the morning with my coffee in one hand and my toast in the other, I thought crosses my mind. It looks like someone in the free and democratic as hell world really wants this war to go on and on. But then I sip my coffee, bite my toast, and tell myself, no way. We are a collective civilized West, right? How come? Let us discuss this matter with our guest. Let's not keep him waiting. Ivan Stupak in our studio, military analyst, former SSU officer. Hello, Ivan.
Hello, studio. Nice to be with you.
Hello. Question. Will the war, be it frost or tends to turn towards a global conflict or any other way you see?
Okay, if you're talking about this particular war, I mean Russian invasion in Ukraine, I think in period 2 months from now, it will remain the same situation, almost the same, plus minus the same situation. I mean, different types of conflicts on different types. I mean, different types of front. I mean, maybe Eastern Front, Southern Front. Maybe we will see some other different fronts. I mean, Kherson region, Zaporizhia region, Donetsk region. But generally, situation will remain the same. Maybe with some different intensity of waging war, but almost remain the same.
The fact that the West is slowing down the transfer of weaponry, is that even the fact?
I do believe that Western countries will support Ukraine till the end. I mean, till the victory. But at the same time, Western countries, they had some problem. I mean, what kind of problem? A lot of countries, they've got politics, but not so much of countries have got leaders. So leader and the politic, they're sometimes two different persons. Maybe some different considerations. They are not adopting some bills which allows to support Ukraine with cutting-edge munition, cutting-edge equipments. But I think now tendency that Ukraine will be provided with different types of very specific equipment, heavy equipment, shells, projectiles. I mean, maybe also combat jets. We are expecting very much to receive combat jets, maybe in 4 months maximum, 4 months period. So, and also, I would like to explain that from my point, I see that a lot of foreign politics, foreign leaders, that now they have more ability, they have more courage to support Ukraine in front of Russian. Finally, because instead of Russian threats of using nuke weapon, etc.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't think you can say much good about a politician that finds courage only when someone is waving, a nuclear club right in front of your nose and says that I'm gonna burn this ground to zero ground if you are not going to give me Ukraine, because that's what this outdated Tsar of Russia says. And this is maybe not the courage, it's the necessity that finally becomes obvious to European politicians. Finally, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to hear that, but it could be done much faster.
I understand, but look, I understand. Europeans have got a lot of different problems instead of except of Ukrainian war. Inflation, migration, election campaigns. So they are involved in this such as this kind of problems instead of Ukraine. So we are very thankful to our Western allies, Western friends, to supporting us, even with those small numbers of munition, but nevertheless, it's very useful and it's very painful for Russian soldiers and especially for Kremlin. Now I'm talking about ATACMS missiles.
Oh yeah. But returning back to Europe and politics and politicians, I believe if you want to end the migration crisis, it's not necessary to wait until Putin will wage a nuclear war and to kill us all. Maybe there is a reason and a way to do it a little bit faster to let Ukraine win. But I read you, I understand that you're grateful for what you have, and you are obviously having more. But how Ukrainians are doing now, consider what you said. What about the counteroffensive? What's going on the streets? How people are feeling? Do you know?
Okay, what about on the ground? Look, our counteroffensive operation now is still ongoing. It's lasted for about more than 100 days. but now we've got some gains. For example, Zaporizhia region, and now our soldiers trying to keep their positions, trying to keep new positions, trying to break through enemy lines. Right. Because of enemy lines, they're equipped with lots of mines, land mines, anti-tanks mines, anti-personnel mines. What else? For today, we've got one good news from Kherson region now, unofficially, but we've got confirmation that our soldiers, Ukrainian armed forces, trying to establish new position on previously occupied regions, and we have a vision that maybe in 1 month's time it could be a new front for Russian Federation. So just remember it. Kherson region, it's maybe second front for Russian Federation.
Slava Ukraini. I mean, this is a great news. I hope, amen to that. Winter is coming. Ivan, yeah, keep your fingers crossed. You know, well, don't feel, you have Zaluzhny. You don't have to have cross your fingers. He's heading, Russian heads to them, and, well, he will be continuing, I believe. But let me get back to our muttons, the winter. Could you please try to forecast the course of hostilities for this winter? What, when, and how? Because is the winter is good? Do you think that the army is waiting for the frost, or is it bad at the moment?
Yes, definitely. Russian armed forces and the Kremlin, they're waiting for winters, and they do believe that winter is the main ally of Russia. Yeah, frost, a lot of frost, and wow. I think that Russia will continue its tactics from the previous period. I mean, attacking, terror, attacking our infrastructure. I mean, central heating supply, electricity infrastructure. Also, I think, from my point, I believe that Russian will change scale of this attack. I mean, enlarge scale. What do I mean? Maybe they will also trying to hit gas infrastructure, food supply chains, for example, a place where grain is stored to provoke lack of bread on the markets, for example. And one more tactics. Maybe they will focus on the regions, to attack regions with kamikaze drones, with cruise missiles, with ballistic missiles, but only focusing on regions with a weak anti-aircraft defense systems. Because in Kiev, it's no doubt, the anti-aircraft system, it's very, very heavy. But for example, Kharkiv region, Dnipro region, Odessa region, anti-aircraft defense is quite weak, but maybe they will focusing on destroying exact regions.
But maybe Ukraine will have those F-16s by then, and we see what maybe happens then, maybe. But let me pass to my last question in this lovely conversation. Israel. Do you believe what happened in Israel? I mean, that brutal attack of Hamas, Israel, and Israel striking back, excuse me, is this the start of the World War III, you think?
I think World War III is already started in Ukraine, because on the Ukrainian side is about 50 plus countries, on the Russian side is about 3 plus countries, 3.5 maybe. But Israel and the Middle East, it's a new hot point on the world map. And Russia Federation, obviously, they're enjoying having a lot of problems for United States, for European countries, especially terrorist attacks, but especially pro-Palestinian rallies across all Europe. They do believe, they hope in Russia, in Kremlin, that Western Europe and the United States will lose Ukraine, and instead of they will lose Ukraine in the focus and focusing more on Israel problems. And in this way, in this logic, Ukraine will have problems with supplying munition, projectiles, different type of armor, and the war will go to the end maybe in 2 months, which Putin is waiting for.
Well, Ivan, let them believe all they want. That will be the disinformation choice of their own. They are already decided their own fate because they are standing against the democracy and the world that is trying to get more civilized. And they are trying to come over and make everything to degrade it. They are the rot inside of our society, and it's just the question of civilization to survive. And I believe we all are at the right side. So thank you very much.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Is it going to be a long war? It is going to be a long war, noted Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant at a meeting with United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The chief US diplomat visited Tel Aviv for the second time during the conflict that broke out between Israel and Palestine. Gallant thanked Blinken for the visit, which he said clearly shows support from the United States. The United States has selected about 2,000 of its military personnel to prepare for a potential deployment in support of Israel. The troops are assigned tasks such as counseling and medical support and are not intended to engage in any combat. Currently, troops are deployed both in the Middle East and beyond, including Europe. The United States President Joe Biden believes that the issue of settling the Palestinian-Israeli conflict based on two-state principle is not currently on the agenda. According to the American president, Hamas must be completely destroyed, but not the Palestinian Authority. What will happen if the current confrontation in Israel turns into the same protracted conflict as the war in Ukraine? The question remains open. The pride of the Israel military industry, the Iron Dome air defense system, is a product of cooperation with American contractors. Therefore, in the conditions of long-term operation of air defense, Israel will need the help of the United States with missiles and components. The issue of 155mm caliber ammunition remains open just as well. During the war in Ukraine, this is the NATO caliber that is in most demand and is being used by Ukrainian troops at a frantic pace. Let me talk about this and more with our guest. Glen Grant, Lieutenant Colonel of British Army in retirement. Hello, Mr. Grant. Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. As you know, Hamas attack on Israel. Was it Israel's intelligence fault?
That's a rotten question. I think, absolutely. Obviously, Hamas have been preparing this for a long time because you can't do what they did in a hurry. And I think that they've been preparing it and keeping the information as tight as they can. But I suspect that Israel, like many other countries, started to rely more and more and more on electronic means of intelligence gathering. And of course, one-to-one personal discussion downstairs in a cellar is impossible to hear unless you're one of those two people. So I think that that's what Hamas has done. They've gone back to basics and actually prepared themselves. I think also that it's quite likely that the Israelis have started to believe their own omnipotence and wondrousness because they've been successful so many times in the past. And then maybe they just got lazy, and not really doing what they're supposed to do, just passing by, so to speak. But obviously they got it wrong, badly.
Just passing by. Well, all right. Well, was Netanyahu also just passing by? Is it his fault?
Well, he wouldn't know. This is something. I mean, he wouldn't know because, you know, the intelligence services are the people that do these things. So Netanyahu relies totally upon what he's told. I mean, he doesn't know anything himself. I mean, he's the boss. So he gets his information through probably weekly briefs. And if those briefs are the same 3 or 4 weeks on the trot, then, you know, it's natural human nature that you start skimming them and you don't actually read them as seriously as they could do. And obviously that some of the people lower down who may have had an inkling of what was coming, that, you know, something bad is going to happen, may have been just too frightened to pass it up. You know, there's all these career things in these things. Analysts are often very, very unsure about actually telling people what they know for fear of ridicule. I mean, you know, hey, look at me in 2018 when I told Poroshenko what was going to happen. We're going to go to war. So what happens? My internet gets trashed. Sorry, my Facebook gets trashed. My phone gets trashed, and that was from the Ukraine side. That wasn't from Russia. So you know, analysts can be quite wary of actually telling what they think to be the truth. As I say, for fear of ridicule, for fear of not getting promoted. Someone says, oh, he's a Cold War warrior. I've had that. I was a Cold War warrior for 10 years from people in the British Ministry of Defence.
So are you really telling me that if I would possess such an information, that someone has 5,000 missiles underground ready to be fired at Israel, and I'm just like, no, it can't be happening. I won't tell it to my superiors.
You might look at it yourself. Well, you might look at it yourself and say, I don't believe it myself. They can't possibly have that. So if I tell someone they've got 5,000, I'm going to look a stupid fool. is very typical of human nature.
Right.
Equally, they may not know there was 5,000. They may have only known that there were 50 or something like this. So you can't, you know, you can't be sure. One end it's you know, human nature, and the other end it's poor intelligence, and probably somewhere between the two of them lies the true answer.
Do you believe the Kremlin is behind that in some way? Is Russian authorities involved?
No, absolutely sure. If not behind it, then running alongside. But I would think, yeah, directing them. I mean, almost certainly that, you know, there in the past there's been help, because, you know, we know Hamas has gone to Moscow. Hamas leadership has been in Moscow. So of course, and Putin needs this. I mean, he needs it to pull resources away from Ukraine, but human resources, equipment, anything else. So my guess is that there will be something else after this. This will not be the only distraction we see. We'll see another one somewhere else.
Like what?
I don't know. Maybe a resurgence of Nagorno-Karabakh, but maybe Georgia again.
Right.
But you see, I mean, at the moment, Putin is concentrating on state capture. And let's be blunt, he's got Georgia, he's got Hungary, he's got Slovakia. He had Bulgaria, but the Bulgarians are fighting back. So in his mind, he might think he's doing quite well, especially if he knows that under the surface, he's got the possibility of another country. I mean, remember, Austria. He's had Austria, if not got Austria. Yeah. He certainly suppressed Switzerland. So when you put those all on paper and look at them, he thinks he's doing quite well, I think.
And is he?
It's difficult to say, because you can't tell how much any of these things are going to create barriers. I mean, let's wait and see on the vote for Sweden coming into NATO. That will be a test case. Okay. You know, it's already been dodgy for a long time. Let's wait for the day.
So let us speculate a little bit. Let's say Putin got his army. He's got, I don't know, North Korea, every imaginable ally in the world on his side, not democratic, not what we call civilized West. What next? What's the point of all that? The World War III?
I don't think so at the moment. I think World War III will only come if there's a miscalculation, not if there's a calculation, because it would be stupid for anybody to do this. I mean, it'd be stupid for someone to fight NATO. I don't think North Korea will want to fight either, because their troops are really, they're most of them are discotheque guard type standard. Untrained like the Russians were. So they're just going to be meat if they do go into fight. But there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. As we remember from Korean War, there are a lot of them. The same with China. There are a lot of them. So if they decide that they're going to do something by numbers, then actually the West has actually got a really serious challenge in front of it. But I don't think they want to do that yet. I think that state capture will be the main task for Russia for the moment, and then trying to actually do what he was doing before, which is break up the European Union and break up NATO by getting inside it, and then twisting the levers to the Russian benefit. Delay is the big thing. Delay on Ukraine. If you can delay stuff on Ukraine, anything, which they've been doing quite successfully. Look at Germany. If they can delay on Ukraine by threats, by using people inside that they've bought, then that's still a positive attack strategy on his side.
In terms of it will be stupid for North Korea to attack NATO, we should never underestimate a perseverance, and we should never estimate a fool and his actions.
No.
Because they could really start it. They could ignite it. They could do it. Maybe they think that they will win. I don't know, for some sacrosanct reason.
But they're very close. It's a very closed society, so they'll have no idea of what other people can do and are doing. So that's one problem in North Korea. But genuinely, I don't see them as being a problem. I see Iran more so as a problem, because Iran has got the problem both inside and outside. So the Iranian government, in some ways, has got to do something, and they're showing such an outward level of hate against Israel that it would not surprise me if they tried to do something more serious. I mean, God help us if they do get nuclear weapons. But let's just say that they don't, and they just carry on what they're doing at the moment. It's still to the benefit of Russia and to the detriment of Ukraine. And that's the bit that we should be worrying about.
Yeah, the beneficiary obviously is Russia. We just discussed that with Cormac Smith. And but assessing the military potential of Israel, do you think that their resource is enough to not just defend itself, because this is not the whole question? They need to obliterate Hamas at the point. Is that right? So do you think that they have...
Yeah, no, I think they've got the capacity to attack and fight Hamas. I've no doubt about that. They'd have to up their game in several areas because they're out of practice. But there again, the base standard of training and equipment is quite high. I mean, higher, for example, than a Ukrainian brigade. So you're actually looking at people going in with quite a lot of firepower and technology. I mean, remember, they pretty much base themselves on the best of America. So it's strong and powerful. But if they have to fight, on two sides,
yes,
then that actually could be quite serious. Now, remember that America has got an agreement with them. So if World War III was going to start, it might start there, because America might feel that it's got to step in if Israel looks as though it's actually getting punished badly, or pushed back, for example.
But is then the United States resource enough to support both Israel and Ukraine? I believe it is, but I just want a confirmation.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and more. And more. I mean, the amount of equipment they've got in the desert still, is the equivalent of the rest of NATO, sitting there. Bombers, aircraft, guns, armored personnel vehicles. There's masses of it in the desert. And don't forget, they've got the whole of the National Guard. So you've got a small army in each state. When people talk about the US Army and it's nearly 1 million, hey, that's only the start. And again, remember that some National Guard have got A-10s. They've got artillery. It's a pretty strong organization. Not to mention the Marines. Marines, which is bigger than the British Army by quite a chunk.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm glad to hear that. But I know you're more like a battlefield man, no, not the politician. But let me ask you a question. I'm just interested. Do you think what's going on in Israel is to detriment of Ukraine? And how will it affect Ukraine, do you think?
The main trouble with it is eating time. Is eating senior politicians' time in America. That's the number one problem. And maybe eating senior military time as well. Because there are only 24 hours in a day. And you remember that, they've also got their own jobs to do. Which in America is internal, is all the politics of an election coming up, the problems of Trump, the problems of Ukraine, China, and then you add another imponderable, another challenging question to the mix, and it starts to eat time, and that's the real thing. Because if it eats time, then the time spent on thinking about Ukraine and preparing properly for what Ukraine needs gets cut dramatically. Because I say, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you're only in work, even for the hardest workers, 14 or 15 hours a day. It soon gets eaten up. And that's the problem. That's the problem.
Do you think that Israel, when answering this barbaric attack by Hamas, stepped over the threshold of international law? It was too much?
No, you're allowed follow-up. You're allowed follow-up by international law. So, if you follow immediately after the people that have attacked you, now there's a second thing, which is that if you then delay, at what point does that cease to be follow-up?
Exactly.
At what point does it cease to be followed? If it's 3 weeks and then you go in, then people will start arguing. Okay, you've passed the hot pursuit stage, because hot pursuit is allowed by law, by every law. But I think that I don't think they've got a choice. I mean, this is a war, and Hamas have declared war on Israel, and Israel has no choice but now to try and end it to their advantage, because if they don't, it's just going to keep coming back, as it has been.
So that means that Josep Borrell, the head of the European diplomacy, he does not understand that, or what? Because he's saying that...
No, of course he doesn't. He's got no more military background than my mother had. Sorry. So don't expect Joseph Borrell to come out with any great understanding of war or anything else. I mean, look at the beginning of this war. He was faffing around left, right, and centre all the time. He hadn't got a clue what to say, and to be frank, I'm not sure that he still has. So he's got an important position, but this is a different game. This is not about nice talking. This is about existential existence of a country, and when you're in that, I'm sorry, but EU diplomats need to stand to one side and let the soldiers actually get on with doing the job that needs to be done at that time. You're not going to have a discussion with Hamas. There's not going to be a discussion, a nice sit-down political discussion on this stuff. No. Because it just isn't going to happen. And same as it can't happen with Putin. No. So anybody who thinks, the Macrons of this world, who think that, I have a special relationship with Putin. I mean, they're living in cloud cuckoo land. This is war. Any more than anybody could have a special relationship with Hitler.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I agree.
Or Stalin.
But Mr. Borrell's diplomacy is like Hamas is not representing Palestine.
Well, they've been voted in and they provide the government. If Palestine doesn't like it, they should have removed them. And you could say, okay, they're not allowed to, same way as Russians can't remove Putin or whatever. But this is real. They are there. You can't split the two up.
Yes, true.
You can't say, all right, all nice Palestinians, you go away and everybody else will fight. The fact is, it's the whole organization, in Gaza has gone to war.
Right.
And hey, there were thousands of people in Gaza who used to go backwards and forwards every day to work in Israel. How many of those possibly knew about what was going to happen, but didn't say anything?
Yeah, well,
some of them.
Yeah, some of them for sure.
Some of them will have known.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. All right, well, let's...
And clearly didn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't have any answer to that. But let me promote you, Mr. Grant. Say Glen Grant is Israel's Minister of Defense. What are Glen Grant's first actions after Hamas' brutal attack?
Oh, that's cruel. Get at the tunnels, because the tunnels are the logistics. And any way possible to find, get into the tunnels and start fighting in the tunnels. Because if you fight in the tunnels, underground. It's riddled with tunnels.
Yeah, well,
underground. It's riddled with tunnels. If you don't get in the tunnels, you're lost. So this war has got to be in the tunnels, and that means the guys have got to have all the equipment for getting in the tunnels. So the first thing is getting to make sure that the soldiers that have got that equipment and can get into the tunnels by any way, shape, or form.
Right.
They've got to get underground, because that's where Hamas is going to fight. That's the what we in military terms, the chosen ground. They know if they can keep those, then they can come back again.
Well, Hamas is already 6 feet under, so let's just keep them there. Thank you so very much, Mr. Grant, for your time and again and for your expertise. Thank you.
No, not at all. Thank
Goodbye.
you, and good luck to our boys on the front line.
We'll give them your good lucks. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Within the next few weeks, Azerbaijan may decide on a military invasion of Armenia. Anthony Blinken said at a closed briefing with a group of United States lawmakers, Azerbaijan took control of Nagorno-Karabakh last month. But this is not the only region under dispute in Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan wants to get a corridor through Armenia to its exclave of Nakhichevan. This region bordering Turkey and Iran is separated from the rest of Azerbaijan by the territory of Armenia. Armenia responded that such a demand is perceived as a territorial claim. At the end of October, the European Union will hold talks between the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan in Brussels. As the head of the European Council, Charles Michel, stated, the EU will work hard to achieve progress in the sphere of normalization of relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. As hard as usual, Mr. Michel? Well, then we should expect another war, I guess.
Using all the European tools to encourage both leaders to make an agreement. And I mentioned yesterday what are the 3 fundamental principles to make an agreement, and especially the fact that it must take into account the mutual recognition of both sovereignties and territorial integrities.
Well, it's not for the first time that we hear the rattling of guns from North Korea's side. Tensions on the Korean Peninsula have reached the highest level these days. This is due to challenges and announcements from North Korea in regard to its nuclear program and missile launches. Kim Jong-un is increasing the visibility of his partnership with Moscow and Beijing in an effort to break diplomatic isolation and bring Pyongyang into a united front against Washington, of course. In September, the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, paid a visit to Russia. Ukrainian intelligence says it clearly, the Russian Federation is getting shells and missiles from North Korea for the Grad missile system. Back then, North Korea received support from Beijing and Moscow during the 1950-53 Korean War and was heavily dependent on Soviet aid from decades. So now, North Korean munitions return to Russia and may actually buy some time for it, giving its industry a chance to catch up with military demand. But it's an open conflict, a war on the Korean Peninsula. Is that possible? There are voices saying that North Korea will not be able to physically attack South Korea without China because South Korea has twice the population and multifold the resources. In addition, official Seoul is not ignorant and blind and is actively increasing the budget for army. North has nuclear missiles indeed, but so far no one knows what the condition is. I really doubt even North Korea knows that, but worth adding that China does not like, to say the least, the provocative launches of North Korean missiles into the sea, because it forces both Japan and South Korea to intensify military activity. In the next 2 years, Japan plans to build 8 ships of a new class, which are actually, as experts say, are carrier killer class. And so far, only China has aircraft carriers in the region.
Watch this.
And now follows the question to artificial intelligence. What happens to mankind if World War III occurs?
A third world war would have devastating consequences for humanity. While it's challenging to predict specific outcomes, here are some of the potential consequences. Loss of lives. Economic collapse. Environmental damage. Psychological and societal trauma. Nuclear fallout. International law and governance. Resource scarcity. In summary, a third world war would be a catastrophic event with far-reaching and long-lasting consequences for humanity. To prevent such an outcome, international cooperation, diplomacy, and conflict resolution mechanisms are crucial.
Watch this.
Let us ask what our guest is thinking about all that mayhem that is going on in the world. Let me welcome Khanin, Professor for the Department of Political Studies and Begin-Sadat Center for Strategic Studies, Bar-Ilan University. hello.
Good evening, pleasure to be with you.
Nice, the pleasure is mine. What, in your opinion, can trigger the Third World War if we are not already into it?
Well, I would say that we are in the situation of the World War already about several decades. Simply the Third World War is a little bit different than we expected or we are used to concerning the experience of the First World War and the Second World War. This Third World War is actually a combination of various local conflicts with a hybrid war, including the propaganda and local clashes and internal conflicts and ethnic and religious confrontations and so on and so forth. But the question is whether these local or regional wars have an option in the nearest future or in a distant future to combine themselves in order to bring the whole globe into a confrontation of everybody with everybody. I wouldn't say this is the situation in the moment, but we're still concerned about all this.
But I believe no expert knows what's going on, because I've talked to experts and they are like very carefully trying to choose words. But I can feel that on the background of it is the absence of the knowledge of what is really going on, is the mayhem and the chaos and absolute. There's no possibility to predict events. Is that right? Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's the situation. Maybe a century ago, the rules of the game were properly clear. I mean, a friend of my friend is my friend. Enemy of my enemy is my enemy. At the moment, you can be a friend of your enemy and enemy of your friend. That's more or less the situation. Let me give you an example. For instance, we have very good relations, even strategic partnership with Azerbaijan. Israel, I mean. On the other hand, Azerbaijan has a strategic partnership with Turkey. Relations between Ankara and Jerusalem used to be much better. A few years ago, I've heard in Moscow from very top-ranking officials very close to Kremlin that Russia at the moment has 2 major partners in the Middle East. One partner is Iran, and Israel is the second one. Relations between Israel and Iran are actually, if they are not enemy, what enemy means, you know. Right. At the moment we have here in the Middle East the so-called various triangles of cooperation and confrontation. And current war in Gaza, or in Israel, in fact, started with the invasion of the military wing of the extremist radical fundamentalist movement Hamas on the Israeli territory, is actually one of the factors, because you can define it as a local war. On the other hand, this local war is a dramatic obstacle to normalizations of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which would be the end of the 100 years long Arab-Israeli conflict. And the end of the 100 years long Arab-Israeli conflict would mean establishment of the system of security in the Middle East, of this triangle, United States, Israel, and Saudi bloc, against Russia and Iran and China and Pakistan. So at the moment, this is not the question, this is not the issue, it's postponed for unknown time. So you can define it as an unclosed triangles, you can define it as a local conflict, but it's one of the places, one of the platforms of the Third World War, which we are not used to.
Yeah, well, do you believe, yes, thank you very much for your answer. The half of a question, do you believe everything lost for Israel with Saudi Arabia? Or it's just a matter of time?
No.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. But Saudi Arabia, as a leader, or at least a country which pretends to be a leader in the Arab world, should keep this and support the symbolic meaning of the Palestinian question. Right. Of course, the Palestinian Arabs is much more a factor that undermines stability of the moderate pro-Western Arab regimes, rather than, as it used to be, became a sort of a solution for them. Because, Israeli occupation of the so-called occupation of the Palestinian Arab territories, whether they're Palestinian or not, it's also a good question, but let us leave it for now. So for them, it was an easy explanation to their peoples in concern of these uneasy questions, why they're poor, on why lacking water or lacking proper education. At the moment, as I said, the Palestinian issue undermines them from inside. And they understand that Arab-Israeli conflict or Palestinian-Israeli conflict is in fact something which prevents from establishment of all the security arrangement in the Middle East against the challenge of Iran and their allies. So I would say when the war will be stopped, if it will not continue to the large scale, high format Middle Eastern conflict, meaning Israeli-Iran war, with the help of, with the support of different subjects, United States from one side, Russia and China maybe from the other side. But at the moment, if it will be still on the level of Hamas-Israeli war, I believe that after the end of this war, Saudi Arabia and Israel will come back to the track of negotiations.
Well, good to hear that. But at the moment, it looks like, like a low-class Hollywood scenario for me, because there's bad ones and the good ones, and there is nothing in between, and just absolute terror and the civilization, at least the world that is trying somewhat to be free to call itself democracies. But
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Dear Professor,
I would say that the end of history is not behind us. We are still in the clash of civilization.
Absolutely. I mean, we're the interesting time we are living in. Well,
I would prefer a less interesting time, but still, that's what we have.
Absolutely. I can clearly say that it's +1 from me to you. I can absolutely agree. But as a professor, can you give me and our audience the worst scenario for this mayhem development? There's a global crisis. What could happen, and that would be the worst thing to happen?
I would say that the worst scenario would be the following. First of all, the fall down of the bulwark of the Western civilization in various areas. South Korea, Taiwan in the Far East, or Japan, Israel in the Middle East, and countries like Azerbaijan in the Southern Caucasus, and of course this defensive line in Eastern Europe. Ukraine, Poland, the Baltic states, and so on and so forth. And then further away, that's the heart of the Western world. Europe and North America, I'm not sure they will manage without it. I guess that Western leaders understand the situation. For example, President Joe Biden, who visited Israel yesterday, was like a very quick lightning visit. He arrived in the morning and left in the evening at night of Israel. So he was, as he defined it, crystal clear, saying that Israelis are fighting not only for themselves. Israelis fighting for us. That doesn't mean that we will see American boots on the ground, but that's pretty clear, that crystal clear, as President said, that they certainly understand that Israel should have everything it needs in order to stop, as we say, to stop this, all the blacks and all the dangerous, and against all the white, on the clear, and all the humanity, and all the liberal and democratic. I think that they, because of that, the question whether Ukraine will be lacking resources provided by the West because of Israel, the answer is negative in no. They will get also. So the Western world understand that these are two different front lines of one and the same war, which you may define the Third World War.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely I'm full of hope that crystal vision of Joseph Biden, the President of the United States of America, will somehow pass to Republicans and Democrats and all the people of the free world. They finally would understand that the missile, if the missile is not hitting your house or not killing punks of your family, it doesn't mean it wouldn't. And Israel now is Ukraine for the Middle East.
In some way, you can say so. At least two countries have mutual illusions. In fact, I would say that East European countries, East Central European countries, former communist bloc, like Poland, like Czechia, like Slovakia, some Hungary in some way, Romania. I taught in many of these countries, giving lectures in various universities, and in Ukraine, of course, as in Russia, in more vegetarian times, or let me put it this way. So at least in majority of these countries, they see Israel as their role model. That means on one hand, they are part of the Western Bloc. On the other hand, Israel succeeded to establish, to strengthen its ethnic, national, democratic state. That means you can be national and you could be democratic, liberal democratic. At the same time, you are able to preserve human rights of every citizen, regardless their religion, ethnicity, origin, gender, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, to enjoy its status of the Jewish democratic state. So it's very important for them. So for Ukrainians, it will be looking on one hand, you're a national country, and a nation state. On the other hand, you are developed, prosperous, and have excellent relations with the Western world. And you can, like Israel, you can be not a member of the European Union, but enjoy high status in the European Union, like Israel is. So for Ukrainians, it was important. I believe it will, for Israelis at the moment, for Israelis, I mean, at the moment, Ukraine is also a role model, yeah? That in spite of the fact, Israel fought and destroyed armies of the several Arab countries at one and the same moment. So for them, it's pretty understandable, the situation which Ukrainians enjoy in quotation marks of this word. And I would say that nobody understands better than Ukrainians than Israelis at the moment do, and nobody understands Israelis better than Ukrainians are. So
that's one good thing about all that. That's just one good thing about what's going on. But tell me, Professor, you are now in Israel, right?
I'm in Israel.
How are you feeling? How people are feeling? What people are thinking?
What people are feeling about the situation here, you mean?
Yeah,
here in
yeah,
Israel?
I mean, everything is. I believe the country is quite united. That's the feeling that I, at least, experience, because
Yes.
I have many Israeli friends, and I haven't heard any single story that is not coinciding with my feeling of absolute unity and absolute standing for Israel with Israelis. And it's kind of capturing. It's kind of you're going to want to stand with a country that can mount itself, can mold itself into an army like that, as in a snip of the eye.
Yeah. Just a few weeks ago, our feeling was that our society is deeply divided. Our country is on the eve of the civil war over the question of the so-called juridical reform, or as those who are against of this reform, as an attempt to make a political coup d'etat. As if Israel is deeply divided over the question of what a Jewish democratic state in the 21st century is, whether it's religious or whether it's ethnic national, whether it should be pro-West, like Western liberal democracy, or it's like should be a conservative nationalist establishment, whether it's Jewish, first of all, or first of all, democratic. I'm a liberal religious Zionist. I believe that there is no confrontation between two aspects. Jewish state cannot be anything else but democratic. Democratic state is Jewish. It's fine, you know. I mean, every democratic state, the Jewish state is always democratic, should be, and any democratic state in the world is a little bit Jewish because of if we are talking about Judeo-Christian civilization, Bible, and so on and so forth. All this, values of biblical prophets and so on and so forth. Americans understand it better than anybody else. So I would say, yeah, it's that I'm not the only one. It wasn't once I've heard from Americans that means especially WASPs, and not only WASPs, meaning the strong core of American nation that they say for us, Israel is not just our ally, not just one more country. For us, it's a symbol of our American identity, and only Jews told that. So I would say that, and like you say, like that, the moment there is a challenge, existential challenge to the country, all this pro-Bibi, anti-Bibi, pro-reform, anti-reform, Jerusalem-style civilization-oriented, Tel Aviv-style, Mediterranean civilization-oriented, all of them in one and the same line, to the drafting officers, all of them at the same line to contribute their blood, all of them volunteering, all of them ready to fight. Those who are abroad, they're just trying to capture flights to Tel Aviv, not from Tel Aviv, in order to join their reserve forces. So we are in the period of unity. That's where we are. We have one and the same flag, which is blue and white.
Well, which is great to hear from you, Professor. My last question about the prophets, but not the biblical ones. Soon the meeting between Xi Jinping and Putin will take place. And between then Xi Jinping and Biden, what the world shall expect from that?
I would say that it very much relates to outcomes, just the ends and the outcomes of the war in Gaza at the moment. If, like in Ukraine, but war in Ukraine, like everybody used to, adopted themselves to the division of forces and understanding where we are, how we deal with that, how we handle the issue. Now we have another very, very hot point in addition to Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, and Southern East Asia, like China, Japan, Korea. And at the moment, everybody looking at the situation in Israel, what happens between Israel and Gaza, and if Israel will be able, due to the changing of its concept, it used to be the concept, let me open the brackets, saying that, okay, since there is no other alternative, we are ready to reconcile with the sovereignty of Hamas there, as far it is not crossing the red lines. When it's crossing the red lines, we are doing like anti-terrorist operation, limited, not so deep, and so on. But at the moment, the question is very easy. It's existential issue, and Hamas should be destroyed. And its leadership, also military and political, will be eliminated. So if it would happen, and after that, we will decide, the whole world together, I mean, Western world together, will decide what would happen, what to do with Gaza the day after, and if we will come to a collective understanding to it, so the Western world would get a tool how to handle the issue on other fronts. That's my opinion.
I wish victory to Israel and nothing else.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Seif, for your time and efforts. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. A pleasure to be with you.
I would love to talk about that for more with you, my beloved audience, but fortunately or not, I must say my goodbyes to you. It was me, Henry Keenan, my show, Talk for More. Find us in the global network. Let us know what you think. Thank you so very much and see you soon.